Hi, welcome to the UPM Book Club. Today we are reading Seize the Time by Bobby Seale, and this is part 4 of that reading, kicking things off at Eldridge Cleaver joining the Panthers. Comrade Gabby, would you like to read the first section?
Of course. As soon as you pull it up, there you go. All right, there it is. So I'll be reading this section. Eldridge joins the Panthers. Early in 1967, Huey heard Eldridge on the radio. Quote, "Damn, who is that cat?" Unquote. Huey kept saying, "This cat is blowing, man. Is blowing, man." He's been in prison. Huey related to Eldridge as a Malcolm X. Coming out of prison. Huey always respected the brothers that came out of prison. He felt that he could relate to dudes who came out of prison. That was his whole key. Huey heard that quote, "This cat's been in prison, man, for 9 years." Unquote. I love how they just want to say I love how they say cats whenever they refer to people. I've never heard anyone say that term when referring to someone.
Right, welcome to 60s and 70s speak.
Yeah,
Especially with
racist.
the constant stuff about, he's blowing. That's 60s for real talk.
Just follow it. Once again, just follow it. Just follow it. Just
right
follow
on.
That was yesteryear's no cap.
No cap, bro. On God. That was this cat's been in prison, man, for 9 years. He wrapped him up. He ran down to the radio station that night because Huey said, quote, "I'm going to talk to this cat," unquote. He said to Eldridge, quote, "Man, look, you got to be in the party. It doesn't make any difference what the name is. This is where it's at. We need you. We want you," unquote. He knew Eldridge could rap, and he'd heard that he could write, and he was writing for Ramparts. Huey couldn't write, but you could get Huey cornered, get all his ideas out of his head, and put them on paper. He'll write if you corner him, but the shit travels fast. Huey understands the need for a media. Huey understands skills being functional for New African people. And that's what Huey wants. He pushed for a Panther newspaper. Right on. Cultural revolution here, people. That's why we got a hold of Eldridge when we heard him on the radio that night. Eldridge told us, quote, "Look, I just got out of prison and I'm checking around. I'm trying to see what's happening." I said to Huey, "This guy from prison, this guy is tired of shit. This guy is like a Malcolm X to us. The boom. this guy can write," quote unquote. One day, a few months later, Huey and I were in Eldridge's apartment. Eldridge had a leather jacket and a beret on. He said, "Fuck it, I'm in the Panther Party. That's all there is to it," unquote. I don't know him then. I didn't know him then. I was looking at him and I was saying, "Well, fuck it. This is another guy saying he's in the party." But boom, we got the pounding out that first little leaflet, and that began to mean something. Next thing I knew, we're over at Beverly Axelrod's house, and we're pounding out a paper, man. So I said, "This guy here is where it's at." Huey related to Eldridge more than I did initially. I just had a tendency to follow Huey. I was never ashamed of the fact that I always followed Huey. I just followed him and listened to him and tried to understand what he was saying. If I disagreed with him, I tried to disagree properly. Eldridge later told us that when he came out of the penitentiary, right?
Penitentiary.
Yeah, the penitentiary. Eldridge later told us when he came out of the penitentiary, he was wired up. He was wired up behind Malcolm X. Malcolm was teaching that it was necessary to pick up the gun. Eldridge had been running around repeating what Malcolm had said, but he didn't know that there were some new African people that had already picked up the gun. He didn't know it until February when we started planning for Sister Betty Shabazz's visit. Marvin, Jackman, and all those dudes were hiding it. They wouldn't tell Eldridge about us. Eldridge said that when he saw all us brothers with guns already and organized, it didn't take him any time at all to relate to that. The only thing he didn't want to give up was the name that Malcolm X had for his organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU. But then he said the same thing. But then he said the name thing was complicated because Malcolm's sister had taken it and incorporated it. There was so much confusion. So many phony people had gotten involved in the OAAU that when he tried to organize the Black House, he was sick of it already. So he just started moving with the party, going everywhere, making all the scenes. He was relating to it and functioning, but he still had some reservations. Eldridge just couldn't understand how it could happen, how he pulled this shit off, or why new African people would be crazy enough to go out in the streets. It looked unbelievable. Eldridge said it scared him. That's what it did. It scared Eldridge. He said that when Malcolm was teaching, he was just dealing with rhetoric about how we had to organize a gun club. We had to we had to do this. We had to have these guns, etc. He said it was an abstract. He said it was abstract and he couldn't visualize it. Or if he did visualize it, he visualized the whole army, the black race armed. But then when he saw us out there in the process of organizing, he saw about 10, 12 dudes with some guns, and he saw all those pigs. It looked like we didn't have a chance. It looked hopeless. But then many times it looked so beautiful and inspiring that he just had to relate to it. What turned all that around for Eldridge was the first scene when the brothers escorted Sister Betty Shabazz from the airport and came by ramparts. That had a huge impact, a huge influence on him. He said he didn't believe it, even after he witnessed it. He said it was like observing pure instinct. What was so important to him was that when those pigs came by there were sisters and brothers on the streets. And the Minister of Defense stepped forward and the shield between his people and the pigs, jacked off the round into the shotgun. Right on. There we go. And put his life on the line. That was it, Eldridge said. That was me there. Do I continue reading or?
Well, let's give Joe a turn. If he's ready. How's your audio doing over there, comrade?
If you guys can hear me clearly now, I believe we can get this started.
Right on it. We can hear you perfectly fine.
Give me 1 second. Let me close the door because there's some background talk conversation. Hold on.
All right.
Right on.
All righty. So the death of Denzel Dowell, the Black Panther Party was called to Richmond by the Dowell family. They had heard of the Black Panther Party over in Oakland. Mark Comfort came down to the office at 56th and Grove and told us that Dowell's family would like us to come over because Denzel Dowell had been killed in Richmond by a Contra Costa County deputy sheriff. We went out there that day and saw that the Dowell family, they began to explain all the details and how certain people had said they heard 10 shots, and the papers at the local media were saying there was only 2 or 3 shots were fired, and how the coroner's office had originally told them he was shot 9 or 10 times. but the police department said he was only shot once or twice. How the pigs had lied about Denzel Dowell, the brother, telling about how he was trying to burglarize someplace. His brothers, Carl Dowell and George Dowell, explained how the pigs knew Denzel by name because they had arrested him a number of times. The pigs had made the threats that they were going to get Denzel. It was a cold-blooded killing of a black man. Some pigs were trigger happy and wanted to shoot a cat. They explained all this to us. Then the family took us over to the site where they killed Brother Denzel Dowell and showed us just where the bullets hit certain walls and the direction they came from, and how the pigs lied, said that he ran and jumped a fence. The blood was 20 yards away from the fence. They must have dragged his body over to the other side and then over the fence. The blood was in two different places. We were investigating a lot of the black people in the black community. And we were investigating, and a lot of the black people in the black community there came out. They had noticed us Panthers with our guns and everything. I guess there were 10 or 12 of us who went out together and went through the whole process of the investigation, of looking over what happened and listening to the information that the people were giving that contradicted all the crap that the pigs and the newspapers had run down, and the people were looking. We were standing on the corner there in North Richmond. There was about 150 people around, some in cars, some across the street. Some of the younger brothers, 15, 16, some 20 years old, were asking us about the guns. And we were explaining to them about the Black Panther Party. All of a sudden, some sister hollers out, "Uh-oh, here come the cops." When the sister hollered, Huey jacked a round off into the chamber of his 18-inch shotgun with a loud click-clack. When he did that, I unhitched the strap that held the hammer down on my 45, and it clacked too. People started moving back. Some of them went across the street. Some got in their cars and drove up the street. Then the pigs came down, and Huey stepped to the curb. I followed Huey and stepped to the curb. And a few feet down from him, the pigs were surprised all of a sudden. They looked and noticed who was ready and standing tall for them. The pigs kept driving, drove right off. In fact, they speeded up and drove away. Then the people moved on back, and some of them jumped up around across the street, figuring there was going to be a shootout, but we just stood tall, ready to defend ourselves. Excuse me. We were educating the people that we would die here for them. This was the position we always took with Brother Huey P. Newton. We told the people that we were going to have a rally that coming Saturday on the corner of 3rd and Chelsea, right down the street. We said we'd run down and educate them about the fact that we'd have to start using guns to defend ourselves because the racist pig cops were coming to our community and murdering our brothers and sisters. Brother Denzel Dowell was killed, and we'd found information about two, three other brothers who'd been shot up back in December in North Richmond there. The brothers had been shot in the armpits, which clearly show they had their arms over their heads. 2 brothers were killed in December, and around April 1st, Denzel Dowell was gunned down by those pigs. Huey told them that we were going to have a rally concerning this, to tell the people it was necessary for us to arm ourselves for self-defense. We went forth to have this rally, and we got about 20 brothers together with their pieces and their uniforms. We had the rally right there on the corner of 3rd and Chelsea. We got guns and a force to defend ourselves. Ain't no pigs going to come down here and stop our street rally. We're going to exercise our constitutional rights to free speech. And we're going to have a rally right here on the corner. Most of North Richmond doesn't have sidewalks at all. But for that section on the corner there, in front of the liquor store, there's an 8 to 10 foot sidewalk between the curb and the store. We got right there on the corner, and all the brothers out there in the community saw us with guns. We lined up along the streets. Imagine an intersection now, one on the corner. We put 4 or 5 brothers, and they were spread out about 20, 30 feet from each other. Coming around the corner, across the street, we put a brother on the corner. Then 2 brothers down from him, 30 or 40 feet apart. Then on the corner where Huey and I were speaking, right there in front of the liquor store, we lined that corner up going east and west. Then we lined the other corner up as you go north and south, so that the whole intersection was lined up with Panthers all up and down the corners, going north, east, west, and south, and on both sides of the street. Ooh, that's powerful right there. And we had our guns, shotguns, pistols, and everything. The people began to line up, and Brother Huey told me, go ahead and start blowing. So I started blowing to the brothers there, running down it to them about the 10-point platform program and what kind of organizations we had now, about the fact that Brother Denzel Dow had been killed by some racist dog Gestapo pig or pigs, and the fact that we must begin to unify, organize with guns and force. That the Black Panther Party had come to North Richmond, and the Black Panther Party is there to serve the people. It's going to be Black People's Party. I guess about 200 or 300 people gathered around, in fact. People in cars just stopped. And the whole section of one side of the street was just a line of cars. And on the other side, coming right up the intersection, there was another line of cars. Some cars were still moving by going on the other side of the street, driving up the wrong side of the street. I was blowing there. And then all of a sudden they start sending some sheriffs in. And I'll read just a little bit more because I want to give Brother Che an opportunity too. So let me just read a little bit more. The people had noticed that we were there. We were with our guns. We were back again. The pigs started driving down the streets. The sheriff pigs. Huey whispered, he said, run it down about the pigs. Bobby, how are we going to hold this street rally? And how are we going to exercise our right of free speech? No pig is going to stop it. And he said, tell them about the reason why no pig is going to stop it. It's because we got guns and force here to protect ourselves and to protect the people. And with that, let me allow Comrade Chet, if you want to take over.
Yeah,
So
I'll take it. Thank you, brother.
Right on, Comrade.
All power.
All
So I
power.
ran it down to the brothers and pointed to the pigs, and the pigs got nervous. I noticed one of the pigs stopped across the street and sat there and started listening. 4 of the brothers came across the street and surrounded by the pig's car, standing near about 9-10 feet away from it. One brother had a .357 Magnum. Warren Tucker had a .38 pistol hanging on him, and Reginald Forte had a 9mm pistol. One brother didn't have a gun, and he gave up. One brother didn't even have a gun, and he got up there too. The prince got nervous. He started trying to light a cigarette, but the cigarette just fell out of his hand and fell out of his hand with all these people looking at him. The Black people had guns and force ready to deal with the pigs, and the pigs couldn't take it anymore. We shouldn't light his cigarette. He shouldn't light his cigarette. He was too nervous. He just up and we organized. I think the people respected the fact that Huey had all of the brothers organized because he had he had them all stationed up and down the street, covering the intersection, ground, guarding the lives of Black people, and while we went forth to organize the people, they respected this organization that Huey put down. Huey put down a form of discipline, and the gun was for our protection and not for bull for bull jobs. So the pig had to split. Another pig was sitting there. The other pigs came up in a car, and of the people some of the people cars moved along. But one man said, "Well, I ain't moving my car. I'm going to sit here and listen." And the cop and this cop got caught in between the cars, and he couldn't move move, and he had to sit there and listen to everything. He couldn't do nothing, and that brother didn't move his car. He had a Cadillac too, and he and his woman was sitting in the Cadillac, sitting right at the head of the intersection. So the pig's car was right in between, and he couldn't move. He just had to sit there and listen and look at 300. That's right. He had to look at 300 mad people, mad at the pigs for killing Denzel Dowell, and 20 Panthers out there armed with guns, disciplined, standing there 30 or 40 feet apart on every corner of the intersection. So it was tied out. The people dug it, and they said, "Right on." And Huey went on and on, and blew to the brothers and sisters, and told them how he was going to get organized, and how we were going to get organized, and how we were going to start using guns and force in an organized and disciplined manner. In every revolutionary manner, we're going to go forth, and we're going to defend ourselves against any racist attacks. And we going to patrol these pigs. We're going to patrol our own communities. Even the old people are going to have to patrol them from their homes and houses. And everybody has to have a shotgun in their home. Everybody. Then George Darwell blew about how his brother Dalzo had been murdered by the pigs. We said we were going to have another meeting over on Second Street, and Huey said we're going to block the whole street off, and we ain't and ain't no pigs going to be allowed to up the street at all. At the second Richmond rally, 300 or 400 people came up. They drove their cars all inside inside the street, and brothers got on top of the cars and top of the roofs and on top of the roofs all up and down the street from one corner to the next, and it was a pretty long block. The whole street was clustered with cars. We were at some particular address where I think some relative of George Darwell lived. That was right around the corner from George Darwell's mother's house. All the people came around, and we had application there for people to join the party. I guess just about everybody out there joined the party that day, from little young 14-year-old and 20-year-olds. We blocked the whole street off. Brother Huey blew. I blew. Brother Huey, Eldridge Cleaver came over, and he blew to the people, and the people dug it, and the people filled it out, filled out the application. One incident happened there. I noticed that one of the brothers moved some 4-5 guns to one of the corners. We were in the center of the block. Some more of the extra brothers had had been moved down to one of the corners, the corner on the north end. The brother explained to me I was blowing at the time, and one of the pigs had come up the corner down there. So the brothers blocked the street off. One of the pigs was standing there, so a couple of other brothers went over to a vacant lot and stood with a M1 and 3006 looking at the pig's car. They couldn't have been there 30 yards from the pigs, stood staring right at the pig's car, and the pigs looked right around, and one of them saw another brother walk up near his car and stand there almost like an air parade rest, but with his hand just a few inches from his 357 Magnum. And the pigs looked at him when he got up there. Then he looked at his partner and he said, "That's a 377 Magnum he got." And when he said that, the pig turned his engine on and he got out of there and didn't come back. Oh, scary fucking pigs, man. They tough when they in crowds. Then a helicopter came around. We blocked off the whole street and held a people's rally with gunpowder. Gunpowder, the only thing that blocked it up. So all they could do was send a helicopter over, flapping all day long to try and bother us. This time it wasn't only the Black Panthers who came, but other people came there with their rifles, with their guns, and with their pieces. I noticed some older brothers come out and they were shaking hands with a lot of us, and they had their pieces under their shirts. They just carry them concealed. And some sisters, one sister came out and jumped out of her car with an M1. We saw the Black community people getting tight and ready, and the helicopter kept flapping over and over. And you pointed up at the helicopter as they were going over and said, "Always remember that the spirit of the people is greater than the man's technology." And the people said, "Right on." I remember we got way over 300 applications. The community people got together, and Georgia sisters and brothers and friends got together and began to have a regular session. And everyone would come to the meeting with the people of North Richmond. The brothers had their guns armed. They were tired, sick and tired, and they loved Brother Huey. They thought Brother Huey was out of sight. He was a beautiful leader, and Huey began to instruct them on many things, on many ways they can go about dealing with the real problems. One of the sisters brought up the problem at one of the mighty sessions that one of those school teachers beat up and slapped down a couple of Black kids in school. She wanted the Panthers, the Black Panther Party, to go to the school, and she was going to get a lot of mothers and parents to go to junior high school where her kids went. We all got together and scheduled it for that Monday. On Monday, we took 3 carloads of Panthers down to the school. All of them were armed down to the grill. We got out of the car with our guns and stood at the sidewalk. Right at the sidewalk, there's a fence near a fence to the schoolyard. All the little Black kids ran over to the fence, and all the little white kids ran away from the fence and went and hid somewhere inside the school. Then the mothers came running up. They went inside and the school building to patrol the halls of the school. They patrolled the halls during lunch period and went and told the principal that they didn't want any more brutality upon their kids in the schools. We concerned citizens, we concerned, and we with your ass and anyone else's that we hear of slapping our children around. Somebody else take over, please.
After about 20 minutes, while the mothers were patrolling the halls, the pigs drove up. This little young rookie jive pig, trying to look mean and thinking he was fat or something, walked up to the car. The brothers were sitting there in the car looking back at him because Huey had trained his brothers, don't be moving in a rash manner. And they got shotguns, 4 motherfuckers, M1s. He looks in the car and he sees all these pieces and he moves back in a hurry. He got all nervous. What the guns for? What the guns for? And I think Huey said, we're the Black Panther Party. Why? Do you have any license? Do you have any driver's license? And Huey gave him his license. Well, you're Huey P. Newton, Minister of Defense Huey P. Newton of the Black Panther Party. And the pig was just shaking. He didn't know what to do, so he gave Huey his license back and went and got on his radio and called up another pig. They kind of hung off away from us, looking and not knowing what to do, shook because there's too many dudes and too many guns down there for them. They called up another car, and the principal of the school came out and tried to talk to the pigs. Their cars were parked a little way out in front of the sidewalk and leads to the door of the school, about 30, 40 yards or so behind ours. All they could do was sit there and wonder. And that's all they did was sit there and wonder. We went there with the mothers and they patrolled the halls for the lunch period, and then we left. About 4 or 5 days later, we got a call at the Panther office. There was a session going on up in the 6th Street office in Richmond concerning the fact that the DA of the county had better do something, had better charge these cops who killed Denzel Dowell. Me and Brother Huey and a number of the other brothers all got together and walked off in a meeting there with our guns. The DA was sitting there and he looked up and he saw Huey. He saw Huey with that big shotgun. The pig could see that Huey's shotgun carried a whole lot of rounds, and Huey had a bandolier holding 26 shotgun shells across his chest. That's how cold I fucking get. Huey had double-aught buckshot, and the pig was definitely checking Huey out. Huey was decked out in the Panther uniform, and he simply walked in and sat down. And he and the brothers and sisters who were there talked about this pig, the DA. He talked about him like he was nothing, running it down about how rotten he is, and he's trying to give off some verbal sincerity. The people saw Huey, and they felt it was no time for them to be taking shit, because here's a man that we respect. Here's a leader. He's armed down to the gills, and he's articulate, and he knows what he's talking about. They were ready to jump over there and snatch this DA's throat out concerning this whole situation and how Denzel Dowell was killed. We blew the dude away and told him he wasn't doing anything, wasn't serving the people, that he was jiving, he was a swine, that he wasn't intending to do anything for the people, etc. But he came up and started talking about, why don't you go to the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department up in Martinez? And if you go to the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department in Martinez, maybe you can get some results there. So the people said, we're going to go to the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department in Martinez. The people in the father and the Dowell family wanted us to go to Martinez, and since we're a people's party, we generally go along with what the people want to do to serve them, especially if we think it will help them to raise their interest in unity and get support and try to begin to attempt to change the system. So we said, yes, we'll go to Martinez with the brothers and sisters here. We're concerned about this here. The Panthers will definitely be there. Somebody called the sheriff's department from the meeting and told them we were coming up and that people wanted to come up and speak to them. The district attorney had to back it up. I think the people put so much pressure on him that he made the appointment for them within the next 2 or 3 days. They made him make the appointment right there at the meeting. They wouldn't let him get out of there till he made the appointment. That's what it was. He saw these guns and the people's power, and he saw that people were ready for Huey to use this gun on him, and knowing Huey, he'll defend the people. We loaded up in our cars. the community people of North Richmond and Black Panther officers and members, and we headed for Martinez. A couple of carloads of brothers and 3 or 4 carloads of community people went to the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. When we got there, they had sheriffs standing all down the doorways and sheriffs all around. The brothers drove up and the first 6 got out. I think there were 3 shotguns, 2 or 3 M1s, and 1 brother with a pistol. I drove around the block, but Huey got out. The sheriff's car came up directly across the street, right at the corner. The pig jumped out of the car, took his key out, and unlocked that little thing that holds the shotgun in it. He got his shotgun out and jacked a round off into the chamber of the shotgun. When he did that, Huey just stopped and looked at him, and the brothers were kind of in line right behind him, doing the same thing Huey was doing, looking at the pig. As soon as the pig jacked that round off, Huey jacked a round off. And then the brother next to Huey jacked a round off. And another brother jacked a round off. And another. The only sound the pig heard was clack up, clack up, clack up, clack up, clack up, clack up, right down the line. The sheriff looked at these panthers jacking these rounds off, took his shotgun, ejected his round out of the chamber, locked his shotgun back up, got back in his car, and drove away. That was the baddest set in the scene. I don't know who he thought he was. Those other sheriffs standing in the door were amazed and surprised because Huey turned right around and turned on them and walked up to the door. And they said, "You can't go in with no gun." And Huey said, "What do you mean you can't go in with a gun? This is public property. This is people's property. We have a constitutional right to carry guns, and anywhere on public property, anybody can carry a gun. So we're going to go in with some guns." I'll take a moment right here to point out that the reason why you can't go into like courthouses and other public buildings like that are, government buildings anymore is because gun enforcement, gun laws and stuff, the regulations that were instilled not long after this were because of this. That was white supremacy's fucking system retaliating because they freaked the fuck out seeing Black men with guns.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh shit, we can't do this," and decided to start doing gun regulations. And I'd just like to also highlight real quick that a few years ago when there was massive protests popping off and shit, these White Lives Matter clowns showed up at the Capitol building of Lansing, Michigan, which is the capital of Michigan. Whole bunch of fucking white dudes showed up there, armed to the fucking hilt. Cops didn't do shit. But with the BLM protests, when people showed up armed, the fucking pigs came out in full force, and not just the pigs, but like the Army reserves and shit like that came out and try to threaten and intimidate. So this same shit still happens now. Anywho, back to the book and rant. If you go in, we're gonna arrest you. So Huey said, "Okay, I'll tell you what we do. We take one brother who's going to volunteer to go in and take the arrest because we're going to make a test case out of this." Huey knew the law very well, knew that they couldn't charge anyone with coming on public property with guns because public property is paid for by the people's taxes. And since we have a right to have guns, a constitutional right, they can't charge anybody. Brother Reginald Forte said, "Here I am, brother." He jumped forward. As he jumped forward to go in with the gun, the pigs all blocked up, about 6 of them. We were about 12 or 13 feet from the door inside the building. Reginald was getting ready to go into the elevator, and the pig said, "No, you can't go in. No guns upstairs." Reginald Forte started saying, "All right, now look, let me go in. I'm ready to go in." As Reginald Forte attempted to go in the elevator, 6 pigs stood shoulder to shoulder, holding themselves against him. Reginald Forte has his shotgun with him. He walked right up to them and bumped right into them. The pigs wouldn't move. Reginald Forte said, "Let me go in." He walked away and said, "What's the matter?" And then he walked right back, right up to them and bumped into them and said, "Will you get out of the way so I can go to the elevator? What are you doing blocking the passageway where people go through?" And he bumped into them again. And the pigs are just standing there. Then Reginald Forte moved to go up the stairs, about 5 feet to the side. He moved to go up the stairs, and some more pigs were bunched up together there. He bumped up into them and said, "Hey, what's the matter? Get out of the way so I can go in." They just held tight and wouldn't let anybody go by. Another pig came up, and I think he said he was a detective of the Martinez City Police, and if you need somebody to protect your rights, etc. He was talking to Huey. Well, if you need somebody to protect your rights, he says, well, the police department, the sheriff's department will protect your rights. Huey P. Newton said, we don't need racist dogs who murder and brutalize us to try and protect us, because we know you're brutal murderers. Get away from me. I can protect my own rights because I have my own gun. At this point, Huey got to arguing with them, and one of the pigs stepped on Huey's feet. Huey pushed him off and said, get off my feet. Who do you think you are? Then this little jive who told us, I can protect your rights, all of a sudden said, well, I think that all these people are disturbing the peace. That's what they're doing, and we're just going to have to place somebody under arrest. Huey got to telling about, you're disturbing the peace. And Reggie was over there bumping into these pigs, driving his body into them, saying, move so I can go up, with a shotgun in his hand. Obviously, they weren't going to let anybody go up. So I called Huey back. I said, all right, Huey, come on. I said, let's go back to the car. Let's put the guns up and go up here for these people, because the people do want us upstairs, and the sister there is explaining that she wants us to go upstairs. I think she wanted us to bawl the head sheriff out. So we went back, locked all our guns in the car, and went to the brothers and sisters upstairs. We left one brother outside to guard the guns. We got upstairs, and me and brother Huey and brother Eldridge all sat there listening to this fool, one of those hog of hogs with his fat belly hanging over his belt, talking about how he cannot do anything for us, that he does not make the laws, and the best thing that we could do is go to Sacramento to the legislature where the laws are made. He kept trying to pass off some verbal sincerity and trying to double talk somebody. Brother Eldridge Cleaver got up and explained. He said, look, brothers and sisters, this dog, this swine here ain't going to do nothing for us. This swine is double talking and jiving. We know he don't care about us, so why don't we all just walk out on this set? Everybody was disgusted and pissed off after this pig talked about going to the legislature and all this kind of double talking crap. So we got up and walked out of the building and went back home. We went back and laid out the first Black Panther Black Community News Service paper. It was 2 sheets of legalized mimeographed paper printed on both sides. The headline was, why was Denzel Dowell killed? We printed about 5,000 or 6,000 of those papers and took all the Panthers and went out into the Black community in North Richmond. We got to passing the papers out and giving them to the people, and children were following, about 100, 150 kids on bicycles, and some of them walking down the streets, following the Panthers, walking all through the community, block to block, passing out leaflets. We gave a lot to the kids and told them to put them on all the doorsteps. One young brother drove up on his bicycle, and I guess he hadn't seen the headlines on the paper, because he said to us, how much will you pay me if I go and distribute all of them to the doors? Is them other kids getting paid? And Huey said, no, none of the other kids are getting paid, young brother. He said, you see who's on the front page of this newspaper? And he looked and he saw Denzel Dowell's picture. He had a paper route and he was getting ready to do his route. The little boy looked at Huey, looked at Huey's gun, looked at Denzel Dowell, and he said, brother. He was very hurt. He said, don't pay me nothing. I ain't even going to do my route. I'm going to distribute these to every door. And he just snatched up a bundle of them, and you could see him going down the street trying to give everybody one, because the brother was remembered. The Examiner came down to the Panther headquarters and did an interview on a Tuesday. They said they were going to print it on a Sunday. That Saturday evening, the headlines hit about the existence of the Black Panther Party, who patrolled cops in the Black community. They wrote it all backwards. They said we were anti-white and we're Black racists. After that, Huey began talking about how we needed to go straight up in front of some city hall, as we did in Martinez, and talk to the people and hold a rally there so we could get a message over to the mass of the people. And the mass media would come along and cover it. We saw another article in the paper about the Black Panther Party about 3 or 4 weeks later. We all read the papers and realized that the news of the existence of the Black Panther Party was being widely distributed, especially in the Bay Area. One Monday morning, Huey called me up and said, Bobby, come over to the house right quick. I went over to the house. Huey showed me the papers. He said, look here, Mulford is up in the legislature now trying to get a bill passed against us. We don't care about laws anyways, because the laws they make don't serve us at all. He's probably trying to make a law to serve the power structure. He's trying to get some kind of law passed against us. He said, I've been thinking, remember when I told you we have to go in front of City Hall, in front of a jail, or do something like we did in Martinez to get more publicity so we can get a message over to the people? This was Huey's chief concern, getting the message over to the people. So Huey says, you know what we're going to do? What? We're going to the Capitol. I said, the Capitol? He says, yeah, we're going to the Capitol. I say, for what? Mulford's there, and they're trying to pass a law against our guns, and we're going to the Capitol steps. We're going to take the best Panthers we got, and we're going to the Capitol steps with our guns and forces loaded down to the gills. And we're going to read a message to the world, because all the press is going to be up there. The press is always up there. They'll listen to a message, and they'll probably blast it all over the country. I know they'll blast it all the way across California. We got to get a message over to the people. Huey understood a revolutionary culture, and Huey understood how arms and guns became a part of the culture of the people in the revolutionary struggle. He knew that the best way to do it was to go forth, and those hungry newspaper reporters who are shocked, who are going to be all shook up, are going to be blasting that news faster than they could be stopped. I said, all right, brother, right on. I'm with you. We're going to the Capitol. So we called a meeting that night before going up to the Capitol to write the first executive mandate for the Black Panther Party. Huey was going to write executive mandate number 1. This executive mandate was the first major message to all the American people, and all the Black people in particular in this country, who are living in the confines of this decadent system. Eldridge and Huey and all of us sat down, and it didn't take us long. We weren't driving, no time at all, not like some of the intellectuals and punks that have to take 10 days before they can write an executive mandate to put things together. I don't think it was 15 minutes before we whipped that executive mandate out, looked it over. Eldridge corrected it, got things better. The executive mandate was to be the first message, the first major message made by the Black Panther Party, coming from the Minister of Defense, Huey P. Newton. Huey told me to organize the brothers, tell them to get their guns and be at the office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to leave at 10 o'clock. We're going to leave at 10 o'clock sharp. Okay. Would either Sean or Shanti like to take a turn reading, since neither of you have yet today?
I can take over.
Right on. Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome. Picking up the gun. Niggers with guns in the state capitol. On May 2nd, 1967, we went across the bridge to Sacramento with a caravan of cars. We wound up right in front of the Capitol building. There were 30 brothers and sisters, 6 sisters and 24 brothers. 20 of the brothers were armed. Huey P. Newton was not with us. The brothers felt we could not risk Huey being shot or anything, so we voted that he would stay behind in Oakland. We voted Huey down and wouldn't let him come. When I first drove up, I didn't know where the steps were. The Capitol looked about a block or so away from me. I didn't know whether this was the right place or not, because we were specifically looking for the Assembly of the state of California. The reason I didn't know is because of an old thing they taught me in school about the Capitol in Washington, D.C. The dome, a round dome, you know, it was supposed to be the, quote, omnipotent area, as Brother Eldridge Cleaver puts it. It's the top, and it was supposed to be made up of 2 houses. So I assumed it was the same as Washington, D.C. I didn't know if I was going to the right place or not. But I said, look, there's some cameramen up there. Huey said, there's always cameramen around these places. So I thought, this is probably it. The other brothers had parked their cars and had come back around to where we were. We got out of the car and got all our guns out. You know, we always followed the laws. As soon as the brothers got out of the car, they were putting rounds into the chambers because Huey and I researched those laws in the past. We had to follow the law to the letter. There was a fish and game code law that you couldn't have a loaded shotgun or rifle in a car. That didn't refer to a pistol, but to a shotgun or a rifle. The loaded rifle or shotgun meant an unexpected cartridge in the chamber. The law also read that unexpended cartridges in the magazine do not constitute a loaded gun. That is, bullets that haven't been fired do not constitute a loaded gun, even if they are in the magazine. But if there is an unexpended cartridge or bullet inside the chamber or a rifle or a shotgun, then it is considered loaded. The brothers got out of the car, and you could see brothers just jacking rounds off into the chambers. A lot of people were looking. A lot of white people were shocked, just looking at us. I know what they were thinking. Who in the hell are those niggers with these guns? Who in the hell are those niggers with these guns? What are they doing? One or two white people, they probably pass it off. Oh, this is just a gun club. And this is where Bobby Dillon gets down on Mr. Jones. You don't know what's going on. Because this was getting to be a colossal event, and those people did not know what the hell was going on. Some of them did look at us like we were a gun club, but a lot of them only had questions on their faces of, what the hell are those damn niggers doing with these goddamn rifles? They actually stopped and looked at us and stood up there around the Capitol and stared up from the grass and looked at us. I didn't pay a damn bit of attention to them because we knew our constitutional rights and all that stuff about the rights of citizens to have guns. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, and no police or militia force can infringe upon that right. It states that specifically. Anyway, all the brothers got up and I said, all right, brothers, let's roll. We started walking and moving. We didn't walk in military form. We just moved. We were scattered all across the sidewalk. We were not in any rank, but we held our guns straight up because Huey had taught us not to point a gun at anyone. Not only was it unsafe, but there was a law against just the pointing of a gun. So all the brothers had that stuff down. They all had their guns pointed straight up in the air or pointed straight down to the ground as they carried them. We were walking up the sidewalk. I remember a brother in the background saying, "Look at Reagan run." I thought that he was just referring to something symbolic, but I did find out later on, after all this shit was over, that Reagan was over there with a bunch of kids. We'd walked almost up this long 20-foot wide sidewalk leading up to the first steps of the Capitol, and one of the dudes said, "Look at Reagan one." Now this is very important because we found out later that Reagan had with him 200 featured youth, featured leaders, as they call them. He was speaking to them on the lawn of the Capitol. I was looking straight up at the front of the Capitol building and I saw a couple of cameramen running around up there. I found out later that Reagan had righteously spotted us. One of the brothers saw Reagan turn around and start trotting away from the whole scene, because here came all these hard-faced brothers. These brothers were off the block, righteous brothers off the block, from what they called the nitty-gritty and the grassroots. You can look at their faces and see the turmoil they've lived through. Their ages ranged anywhere from 16, which was about the youngest we had there, that was Bobby Hutton, all the way down to myself, 31. I guess I was about the oldest. We righteously walked on up to the first stairs, and then we walked on up to the next stairs. Bobby Hutton was on my right side and Warren Tucker was on my left side. Bobby Hutton had a 12-gauge shotgun, and Warren Tucker had a .357 Magnum. We walked all the way up, and they stayed right next to me. We got to the stairs. Now, personally, I do not remember reading Executive Mandate number 1 on the stairs, as I was ordered to do. I don't remember reading it there, but the brothers told me and everybody told me that I did, in fact, read it. I'm on the stairs and I'm trying to make my mind up about what's going on. It wasn't any long process by which I had to make up my mind. Huey's emphasis on going into the Capitol was based on the fact that there might be a string of National Guards and policemen there, in case they found out we were coming. I heard the security guard over there talking to 2 brothers when I glanced over there a second time, and I heard him say, "You aren't violating anything with your gun, so if you want to, you can go inside." And that made my mind up for me. But I also made up my mind in another context too, that I personally wanted to see the area where a citizen has a right to observe the legislature. I read in the paper that Mulford was an assemblyman from the 16th Assembly District in Oakland, so it was the assembly that I wanted to see. I waved to all the brothers. I said, "All right, brothers, come on. We're going in here. We're going inside." The brothers were scattered all out in front of the Capitol. One of the cameramen walked up to me. "Are you going inside the Capitol?" he said. I said, "Yeah, we're going inside." And I snatched the door open, and me and Bobby Hutton and the rest of the brothers walked through that door. Warren Tucker was on my left, and brother Bobby Hutton with his 12 gauge shotgun was on my right. We was off into the lobby area, all around, to my right, to my left. Everywhere there were people, predominantly white people, who looked shocked. Man, they were shocked. As we began to walk, I noticed one thing. They moved and stepped aside, and I saw some with their mouths hanging open, just looking. And they were saying with their eyes and their faces and expressions, "Who in the hell are these niggers with these guns?" And some of them were just saying, "Niggers with guns, niggers with guns." And I pointed those out as enemies because they were confused. I saw three or four faces that really caught what was going on. They must have been in the assembly and heard Mulford talking about us because they frowned their faces up and looked at us like a bunch of pig racists. Like I've seen racist pigs look at me and Huey like they wanted to kill us. I saw a long hall in front of me, a very long hall. I said, "We're looking for the assembly." I saw a sign that said Senate and had an arrow that pointed to the right. But I was looking for the assembly and I hadn't seen any sign, so I walked on. As we walked down the hall, cameramen were running from our left and from our right, around Bobby and around Tucker, jumping in front of us, taking flicks and clicking flicks. Cameramen with movie cameras were shooting, but that didn't make any difference. I just tightened up and squeezed the mandate I had rolled up and kept walking. I stopped and said, "Where in the hell's the assembly? Anybody in here know where you go and observe the assembly making these laws?" Nobody said anything. Then somebody hollered out, "It's upstairs on the next floor." We went up to the second floor and started walking again. By this time, there were many cameramen in front of us, backing up and taking pictures of us walking down the hall. Movie cameramen, still cameramen, regular cameras. Bulbs were flashing all over the place. I got about midway down the hall when I saw a gate. I didn't relate to the gate at first, but I turned around and asked the reporter, "Could you please tell me where I go to observe the assembly making the laws? I want to go there. I want to see Mo for supposedly making this law against Black people." That's what I want. That's what I was thinking to myself. I want to see this. So he said, "Straight down, sir." I went ahead and saw this gate. As I was approaching the gate, when I was about 5 or 6 feet from it, this pig jumped out, this state pig, and said, "Where the hell are you going?" I said, "I'm going to observe the assembly." "What about it?" "You can't come in here." "What the hell do you mean I can't come in here? You're going to deny me my constitutional right? Every citizen's got a right to observe the assembly. What's wrong with you?" And while the conversation was going on, the reporters were vamping inside the gate, and so many reporters were trying to get in there. They bammed and knocked the pig all up against the wall, trying to get pictures. The only thing that was in front of me was the pig and just a little gate, swing gate, like a swinging door, but it was only 3 feet high. When the reporters vamped all over the pig, he just moved out of the way, and I just proceeded to move on. As I proceeded to move, the reporters had always had a way for me to travel. I noticed the way to go was to the right, so I moved to the right. And as I moved to the right, I could see a kind of heavyset short man, about 5'6" or 5'7". As I approached the big door that was 3 or 4 times as tall as I was, he was opening the door. He was opening the door in a manner of, "Yes, sir, you sure can come in. Come in, come right on in, sir. You have the gun." That's what he was saying. "You have the gun. Come in." And he opened the door in a very humble manner, like a servant, like a vassal. That's the way he opened the door. He was scared. I walked inside, and as I did, I saw a lot of what we call back seats. back seats in a theater, inside the assembly. I looked to the left and I looked to the right. I walked to my left. There was an aisle over there. Cameramen and reporters jumped all in front of me. Something funny about the cameramen and reporters getting up in that aisle to my left. A lot of them came in another door because I know they weren't in front of me when I hit that door. They must have come in another door. As I was walking to my left, I remember hearing the speaker, the assembly speaker, saying, "Get those cameramen out of here. They're not supposed to be in here." As I got to the aisle, Eldridge Cleaver was there all of a sudden. Eldridge Cleaver was there, and Warren Tucker was halfway up the aisle with a .357 Magnum on his side. I glanced up and saw some so-called black representatives in the legislature who we referred to as Toms, sellouts, bootlickers, because that's exactly who they are, all of them. They were looking at the man as if to say, why did they have to come here? They hated us being there, those bootlickers. I looked at those bootlickers, those Uncle Toms, very intensely. I didn't care for them because they never represented us there. And this kind of humble shoulderedness and looking back, well, here they are, they're here. What are they doing here? Someone was saying, this is not where you're supposed to be. This is not where you're supposed to be. We were trying to decide whether to stay there on the floor of the assembly or go upstairs. We were trying to discuss that in a very short span of time, in less than a minute. The next thing I know, a pig and Bobby Hutton passed behind my back. Bobby was cussing out the pig who had snatched his gun out of his hand. He had snuck up behind him and snatched his gun out of his hand. Bobby Hutton was cussing the pig back. What the hell you got my gun for? Am I under arrest for something? If I'm not under arrest, you give me my gun back. You ain't said I was under arrest. He was remembering very well what Huey had taught. Always ask if you're under arrest. And if you're not under arrest, then you stand on your constitutional rights. So I turned and ran up to the side of the pig and said, is the man under arrest? What the hell are you taking this gun for? He said, you're not supposed to be in here. This is not where you're supposed to be. I asked him, is he under arrest? If he ain't under arrest, what the hell you got his gun for? Another pig walks up and hands the same pig a gun, which I recognize as the same gun which Mark Comfort had, a 30.6.
30-06.
30-06. 30-06. Got it. I walked out of those big doors. This pig, me, and Bobby. Bobby was on one side and I was on the other side. Bobby cussing the pig out, calling him all kinds of motherfuckers, and telling them to give him his gun back if he ain't under arrest. Just as we got to the elevator, the pig grabbed hold of my right shoulder. I kept asking him if I were under arrest. He pushed me, and when he pushed, I went into the elevator. I said, all right, we're under arrest, brothers. We must be under arrest. Come on in, let's go. Because just before the pig grabbed me, he said I wasn't under arrest. So I think I accepted this kind of informal thing of him arresting us at this point. Then it flashed in my mind, the mandate, the message that Huey sent. I haven't read it. I gotta read the message. I gotta read the message. So 9 or 10 of the brothers just crowded in the elevators with guns, and some reporters got on the elevator too. We went down to the first floor and we went to the right into a little room with a counter. The room was about 10 feet long and 6 feet wide. All of a sudden, I saw all these cameramen poking their cameras in the doors. I said, yeah, the mandate, the message that Huey told me to read, the message, gotta get the message over. So I pulled the message out and opened it up, and I read the whole thing. In the background, Bobby Hutton was cussing the pigs out and telling them to give him his gun back. You get me my gun back. You ain't placing me under arrest. You give me my gun back. You ain't placing me under arrest. That might have been mentioned 3 or 4 times. He called the pigs all kinds of motherfuckers, which even came over on TV, I heard later on. At this point, after I finished reading the message, right at this point, a black pig walked in. A nigger pig. A Negro pig walked in. As he was passing in front of me, I said, look, man, are we under arrest or not? And he says, No, you're not under arrest. Then damn it. I said, give these black brothers back their guns. At this point, he said, they're going to get their guns. I said, we'll give them back. We'll give them back to them. And Bobby Horton tore into them. Bastard, load my gun back up. You unloaded my gun. I see you unload. You unloaded my gun. Load it back up just like you had it. Give me my gun back. I glanced over at the counter there, and they were doing something to the guns, the 30-06, and Bobby Hutton's pump shotgun. Next thing I knew, they had the guns back in their hands. I was looking at all these cameramen. They asked me some questions. Somebody said to read it again, so he didn't catch it. I read the mandate again right inside that little room. When I finished reading it, I figured it was time to go. So I said, let's go. We cut out and came out the door. Then some cameraman walked up to me and asked me to read the message once more. So I read it again. First, I was on the upper steps in front of the Capitol. I read it and then I got down to the lower steps and read the message still another time. I said, all right, brothers, let's go. At that time, I knew what Huey P. Newton was saying about the colossal event had occurred. Because many, many cameramen were there. Many, many people had covered this event of Black people walking into the Capitol and registering their grievance with a particular statement. A message, executive mandate number 1, that Huey P. Newton had ordered me to take to the Capitol to use the mass media as a means of conveying the message to the American people and to the Black people in particular. We walked out and got to the car, and Brother Eldridge Cleaver came up behind me, and Eldridge said, brother, we did it. We did it, man. We put it over. I said, that's right, brother. We sure did. So I said, all right, brothers and sisters, let's go. Let's get out of this town. I remember telling everybody, the sisters and brothers cooked some chicken. The brothers were crowding up. Some of them were slightly behind us. And I said, let's go. We're going to go eat all this fried chicken that we got here because I'm hungry and it's hot in this town. It's hot, brother. That's literally us. So I went and got in my car and I looked back for those people who'd parked behind me. I opened the car door and asked the people if they were ready to go. Let's go, they said. All right, brothers and sisters, let's go, I hollered. As I pulled out, I asked, where's everybody else? They're around the corner, somebody said. Some of them tried to park around the corner, so we drove around the corner. Further on down a long, long block, I stopped and made sure that all of our people and all of our cars were in a line behind me. Warren Tucker, who was driving the second or third car, hollered to me, hey man, this car is hot. He was driving my 54 Chevy. It needs some water in it so we can cool it down. The engine was running hot because there was something wrong with the radiator. Later for that, I said, we're going outside of town. We'll eat that chicken and we'll get water later on. So I turned off in the right-hand lane. Just before the corner, I noticed a sign, San Francisco, turn right. I stopped for the light and noticed a service station across the street. I debated in my mind. I decided that we go ahead and get the water. Instead of turning right, I waited until the green light came on and went straight across the street and turned up into the service station. The rest of the brothers and sisters rolled into the station and just sat there. It was very, very hot. It was burning up. I decided to take off my leather jacket, but to take off my jacket, I had to get out of the car. As I was opening the door, I looked up and saw a pig at the corner walking south on the sidewalk from his car. He had his gun in his hand. I jumped out. I came on out of the car. I walked straight towards him. I stopped and he stopped. I said, now wait a minute. I said, now first thing you have to do is you have to put that gun away. Put it back in that holster. If you want to make an arrest, you can make an arrest, but you better put that gun away. And the next thing I heard was brothers jacking rounds, jacking shells off into the chambers of their guns. When they saw the pig walking up with that gun, they started jacking rounds off. I said, put that gun away. I looked him dead cold in his eyes. He was a scared pig with his gun out. He took his gun after hearing all the rounds and me telling him to put his gun back. He slid his gun back into his holster and kept his hands off of it. Right on. Then I looked up and there was another pig who had walked up near. He'd parked his motorcycle and jumped on his little radio. I can't remember what the hell he said on his radio, but he looked back at me. We got a right, he said. We got a right to have identification. I said, maybe you do have a right to identification, but you just make sure you keep your damn guns in your holsters. The next thing I knew, other pigs were driving up. I heard something come over the radio that said, arrest them all on anything. Arrest them all on anything. That's what it said. Then he asked me where I had been. I said, we've been to the Capitol. Why? What about it? You know what he asked me? He said, what are you, a gun club? I said, no, we're the Black Panther Party. We're black people with guns. What about it? As I began to move away, I saw a lot of pigs coming up. Plainclothesmen jumping out of cars in the middle of the streets, everything. I still wasn't disturbed by them at all. I was just walking. Some plainclothesmen came up. You got any identification? I said, yeah, I got identification. I saw a pig opening a door of one of the cars. I ran over to the car. I said, keep your hands off. I turned around and two pigs were sneaking up behind Sherman Forte. Before I could say anything, they grabbed hold of both of his arms, and one of the pigs snatched his pistol out of his holster. And I said, is he under arrest? Yeah, he's under arrest. I said, take the arrest, Sherman. The pig asked me again about identification. I went to my back pocket to pull out my wallet, and when I did that, the pig almost simultaneously grabbed my right arm, and another pig grabbed my left arm and said, you're arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. Then he snatched my gun out of my holster, holding my hands. They handcuffed me readily and began to move me to the car. They drove me to the Sacramento police station. As we came out of the elevator there, one pig grabbed the handcuff and pushed them up real high, so it hurt and pained. And he ran me right up against the wall and said, now you stand there with your face against the wall. That's what the pig said. And my face hit that wall. The wall was very cool. It was a soothing cool. I was glad to lay my face against this cool wall. Sherman Forte was to my left. I looked over at him. What about it, brother? Ah, man, it's nothing, he said. It's all right. Yeah, I said. Going to be all right. They took me to a cell. I asked myself, did I fuck up? I didn't know. I was very tired. I got on the other side of the door, 3 or 4 feet away from it, lay down and righteously fell off to sleep. Somebody was unlocking the cell. There was Eldridge. Oh, God damn it. That hurt me. That hurt me bad. I said, God damn, Eldridge is arrested. I knew that was bad. Eldridge was on parole. I said, Eldridge isn't going to get out of jail. I felt so bad. I said, man, they got you arrested. You might have to go back to prison, Eldridge said. Fuck it. It was worth it because we did it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, comrade. That's probably a good place to stop for today, so that way we got plenty of time for discussion. So I'll leave that right there for next week.
All right, I guess I won't read.
Oh, sorry. I mean, if you want to, I guess we can.
No, it's all good.
Come to think of it, we started a little late, so we're only at about an hour and 15 minutes in. Do you want to get down in another section?
Only if, like it's on the schedule, if we have time and or, it doesn't interfere with our next week or next book reading schedule.
Gabby and I actually haven't put together a schedule for this reading group. We've just been kind of playing it by ear and reading however much we feel like going through. So it's all good. It's up to you. If you don't want to read the next section today, then you can read first next week.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll admit I'm fat and happy after sushi, so reading seems kind of
Right on.
Is that a yes or a no, or a today or a next week?
yeah, next week.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I always have loved this section of the book because it was one of those first moments where they literally come out guns blazing like, fuck the bullshit. We're asserting our fucking rights. You can suck it if you don't like it.
Not nice, not making nice, and I'm glad that they made clear that that African people aren't here to make nice. Okay, we're not here to make nice anymore. I'm glad that they made that crystal clear because especially at that time, we have been so torn down, especially with, these identity crises and the institutional interpersonal colorism and the lynchings and all of the genocidal conditions that we have been in for so long, but making it clear to everyone, like that was a testament for its time because it made everyone know crystal clear that African people can assert their right and they were not going to make nice anymore with them. And I forgot that Reagan was I think he was governor of California at that time, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
That made sense. That made a lot of sense because this was literally a decade before his genocidal presidential run, that whole bullshit throughout the 80s, which was literally like an attack against everyone because look at what happened with the AIDS crisis and the move bombing, like, so it's very very
drugs.
very very telling, very very telling. um but I'm glad that they made it clear that African people can assert their right, like full front in front of everyone, not being afraid about it. Because back then, and even still today, we're still trying to make nice, even under these genocidal capitalistic conditions, and that was a testament for the times back then. It was a testament for the times back then, and like executive mandate number 1 for the Black Panther Party. I haven't read that mandate in forever, so it's kind of a bit iffy. But the fact that they were able to do that in front of everyone in a Capitol building with probably like the most outward fascist proto president of that time, and they just went out and did it. They just went out and did it. And they made that very clear to everyone.
Right. It was one of those things that was really important to do because when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were written, they were written for the benefit of wealthy white men, period.
Yeah.
And so by this point in time, the late 60s, early 70s, those dynamics had shifted for quite some time. People had been freed. We'll use that term in very loose fucking quotations of freed from slavery. We all here know that the 13th Amendment merely allocated it to the prison system and wasn't actually an end of slavery at all. Yeah. But at this point, it was at least a matter of, fuck you, I am a free person and my rights are just as valid as anybody else's to be able to carry these guns. So fuck you, try enforcing something of like, well, no, this freedom to carry arms doesn't just fucking apply to white people. Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
It was really fucking important to show people because, and still is. Because look at what the fuck's still going on of pigs in the fucking street murdering the fuck out of everybody, but especially Black, brown, and red people.
Yeah. It's still going on. It's still going on, even if all of those so-called Black representatives, in the House, like I don't care for them. I don't care for them. I don't care for any of them because it's a matter of telling our ancestors to make nice with our oppressors, to make nice with capitalism, to make nice with our oppression, with our oppressors. And it led to the conditions at which African people were in back then, and especially today, as we see now. Because once again, the fact that African people are literally proclaiming rights preserved and only preserved to wealthy, European American men, really? Oh no, they couldn't have that. They couldn't have that. They were literally changing the dynamic in front of everyone. And you wonder why they have all those gun laws? It's because the system put it there because of what happened. That's the only reason. It's not about protection. It's not about safety. It's about the fact that they hate African people that can be able to bear arms. Even if they got the law down to a T, they don't care about that law because the fact of the matter is those gun laws are only reserved for European Americans, so-called white people that they can only make as exploitable, as their livelihood, and make it seem like that they have rights and all the rights and all the privilege in the world. But when we know that privilege is a timetable, and as we've seen this year, that privilege has run out, and now they're targeting everybody, not just African people, not just Native people, but everyone else. And we make that very, very clear back then for many, many years, and they did not want to listen to us. And now look. So I don't want to hear anything about, these gun laws and safety, because the fact of the matter is those gun laws were put in because they cannot handle no one in so-called white skin that is not in so-called white skin being able to defend and be able to bear arms. They cannot handle that because it was literally going against the grain of capitalism. And what happens and how they respond with fascism, because it's capitalism being threatened. It's capitalism literally rotting away because we're defying the system. We're defying the structure, and they did not want that. So once again, how do they respond with fascism? Because that's literally the highest form of capitalism. Because once again, as George Jackson put it in simple terms, is economic reform. So they reformed the hell out of their structure in order to suppress and repress African people, to suppress and repress Native people, to suppress and repress Filipinos, to suppress and repress Japanese people, to suppress and repress Irish, Appalachian people, and other oppressed people. That's it. There's no other reason for this other than they cannot handle anyone that is not in so-called white skin being able to bear arms and their non-negotiable rights. And they were threatened by it. So they responded with hella fascism and repression. And we
it was
see
bipartisan too.
yeah. And we
That's
see
important to know that the gun reform shit in this instance was absolutely fucking supported by both Democrats and Republicans. Even down to the NRA themselves supporting this legislation, because they too, just like the establishment, were just as fucking frightened of Black people being armed. Even the fucking NRA was like, oh shit, guns that aren't in only white hands? What the fuck? So this is important to make note of, that Democrats are just as fucking fascist as Republicans, and Republicans, especially the NRA motherfuckers,
they're one
only
party.
fucking care about rights so long as you're pink or peach.
Yeah, they're one party. They're one party. There's no separating Republicans and Democrats. They are both the same people. They just have two faces. And this is what we've been telling people for years, and they did not want to listen because they've been so brainwashed to vote blue, vote blue, vote blue, and look at where it ended us up at,
Right.
especially in 2020, with COVID still going on. Look at what happened with that. Look at what happened with that. Because those people are so brainwashed, they don't even know what the hell to think. So it's very,
No,
very
most of them really think that their vote is making a fucking difference in the world. And it's like, are you paying attention? You're not paying attention.
It's
Motherfucker, pay attention.
It's reform. It's reform. It's economic reform. You're voting to die. You're voting to keep giving your tax dollars to an institution that literally called you syphilis soaked 91 years ago.
Yep.
That's what you're doing. And you know
fun.
this. You know this. If you read, I believe, Medical Apartheid talks about the syphilis experiments around Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, in Macon County. They were calling my people sexually promiscuous and, comparing us to rabbits and calling us syphilis soaked, a notoriously syphilis soaked race. That's what they called us 91
They're
years
the ones who infected everybody there.
Right.
Intentionally.
Right. They gave us syphilis. They gave us that. We have so much syphilis because they gave us that. They gave the Native Hawaiian syphilis. They gave the Chicano syphilis. They gave us syphilis. Where do you think it's coming from? And why do you think it's so bad? Because our health is literally the exploiting driving force of capitalism. This is what we have been saying. And, going back to the Black Panther Party, making it clear that they do have a right to bear arms as well, once again, they could not handle any of that. They cannot handle any of that. And the fact that they went out to, reform and make people fooled out of their mind and make it seem like, these people, are so anti-right and all that stuff. When if you actually look at the Chicago chapter, especially, that was literally not the case at all. So, like,
they spoke out against all forms of racism, and they called out Black nationalists for having prejudiced views. And yeah, there's a massive difference between the systemic racism that specifically fucking targets Black people, brown people, and red people versus personal feelings of prejudice. But they did not care who they saw it in, they called it the fuck out.
Right. If you looked in Chicago, they were treating the Irish Appalachian migrants the same way as us. They were treating everything the exact same way. Once again, the police ran that city. It is still running our city. This is what we have been saying. And because of the suppression by the mass media, by bourgeois media outlets for so long, they have just been on autopilot ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely. Comrade Sean, I see you got your hand up. Do dispel.
I sure do. I just actually read some information about Christopher Columbus, and there was no syphilis in the Americas. There was no syphilis in Spain. The only place you could find syphilis during the times of his journeys was in llamas.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What fucking bestiality was going on?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Columbus was doing that. He was doing all of that. And you wonder why he died so early, because he was doing all that shit. He was doing all of that. Okay? He was doing all that.
Those poor llamas. What the fuck?
It's the truth. It's the truth. And that's what those Native people had to face. The Dinos, all of them, they had to face that. They had to face that, and almost got completely wiped out because of what happened with Columbus and his posse, including some Basque folks, because he did bring about like 100 Basque people over to join in in this genocide, essentially. So yeah, he was doing that. He was doing that. Oh
That'd be
yeah.
nasty.
Oh yeah.
Just
Oh,
thought I'd share that super important and relevant information because basically we can blame all of syphilis on his dumb ass.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, these are all interconnected things. We're not stupid. We've been saying this for years, and no one wanted to listen to us. And now it's being shown out in the light this year, especially now. We know what's going on because we're in it. We've been in it. They didn't want to listen. And once again, making health into a driving force for, capitalism on how, perfectly exploitable you are to the system. Like that's literally the case. Like that's exactly the case. Yep. Yeah.
This is all just so very what the fuck.
Yeah. but
Didn't mean to derail the conversation.
It's okay. You just fucked my brain up for a minute.
It's okay.
Be all right. I'll be all right. Just why the fuck? Good Lord.
When you've been at sea for that fucking long, you get lonely, I guess, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly the thing that they try to do with the Black Panthers, trying to make these gun laws and all this stuff, essentially as a way of genocide, essentially, because suppression does come into that as well, because there were a lot of anti-African laws that they passed in California in the 70s. So this was kind of like the leading point up to that. And Eldridge Cleaver, like even though he had issues, a lot of issues, he kind of was the I guess the stepping stone, you would say, into making it more bolder to proclaim it to everyone, which once again was a testament for the times, because it was literally us taking our stand, once and for all. And like, all the things, because once again, Reagan was governor at the time. So this all makes sense, you guys. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. And the killing of the kids, that was also what was going on around Oakland and Sanford in the Bay Area, especially still to today, because there's a lot of missing African youth in Oakland, and there's also I believe, an opioid crisis going on in Oakland as well at the same time. So once again, these were things that they were literally boldly introducing to the forefront to the media, and the Examiner, fuck the Examiner, because once again, that's a bourgeois media entity. So they will twist anything, anything, anything to get the people on the side of the bourgeois system and make it seem like, we are, we're anti-white and all this stuff, and we're just trying to kill everyone. That's exactly the same rhetoric that they use for the Panther 21. That's the same thing that they use. That's the same tactics that they use. And going to this is very important that we study our enemies, because once again, they are sophisticated. They are sophisticated, way more ahead. They will use whatever tactic in the book to get the masses to the side of their oppressor, of our oppressor, instead of themselves. And they'll be running from themselves and running to the same oppressor that's killing them and slowly killing them, And I'm glad that they really, really definitely made that clear, the first executive mandate that they made, because once again, taking control of the narrative, taking control of our destiny, in front of everyone, literally using the media as a platform. That is literally one of the ways you can get the masses to decide, as long as it's live, as long as it's uncensored, as long as it's, in the moment, then you can make headway with that. It's just now that today, because so much has changed about mass media, but the core principles still stay the same: to affirm the existence of the bourgeois system. And we have to keep in mind that they are more sophisticated than ever. And especially with what's going on in Palestine, with the indigenous Palestinians fighting back after 75 years of genocide by the puppet state of is not real, because it's not real. Once again, they're pulling out every tactic in the book to change the narrative, to suppress the masses. And I'm glad that they did that, because once again, it was a testament to the time, using the media as a platform to make the message, to get the message out there to the masses, to the people. So it was a switch around. It was a switch around, and I'm glad that they did that. Was it perfect? No, but it was a testament to the time, because once again, we're making clear that this is our destiny, that we have these rights just like everyone else, and we will practice them by any and all means, no matter what. I'm glad they did that.
I just pulled the file up in the Marxist Internet Archives. If you want, I can read executive mandate number 1, so that way it gives some context, because that's something I wish was actually in this chapter.
Yeah, you can read it.
Second, this back over here. There we go. There we go. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general and the Black people in particular to take careful note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at keeping Black people disarmed and powerless at the very same time that racist police agencies throughout the country are intensifying the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of Black people. At the same time that the American government is waging a racist war of genocide in Vietnam, the concentration camps in which Japanese Americans were interned during World War II are being renovated and expanded. Since America has historically reserved the most barbaric treatment for non-white people, we are forced to conclude that these concentration camps are being prepared for Black people, who are determined to gain their freedom by any means necessary. The enslavement of Black people from the very beginning of this country, the genocide practiced on the American Indians, and the confining of survivors on reservations, the savage lynching of thousands of Black men and women, the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and now the cowardly massacre in Vietnam, all testify to the fact that towards people of color, the racist power structure of America has but one policy: repression, genocide, terror, and the big stick. Black people have begged, prayed, petitioned, demonstrated, and everything else to get the racist power structure of America to right the wrongs which have historically been perpetrated against Black people. All of these efforts have been answered by more repression, deceit, and hypocrisy. As the aggression of the racist American government escalates in Vietnam, the police agencies of America escalates the repression of Black people throughout the ghettos of America. Vicious police dogs, cattle prods, and increased patrols have become familiar sights in Black communities. City Hall turns a deaf ear to the pleas of Black people for relief from this increasing terror. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense believes that the time has come for Black people to arm themselves against this terror before it is too late. The pending Mulford Act brings the hour of doom one step nearer. A people who have suffered so much for so long at the hands of a racist society must draw the line somewhere. We believe that the Black communities of America must rise up as one man to halt the progression of a trend that leads inevitably to their total destruction.
I remember that. I remember that now.
All power Huey.
Yeah.
Okay. He had a way of putting shit that was just beautiful.
Oh, oh yeah. I definitely remember that mandate now. There's a anthology. There's an anthology of a few African political prisoners, Daruba bin Wahad and Asada Shakur that included that mandate.
Mhm.
And I haven't read it in a while. So, but yeah, that was definitely what was happening, because once again they were becoming more sophisticated, and it was science leading up to the full blown presence of CONTOPRO, because they mentioned that the whole CONTOPRO system, the whole CONTOPRO program, it was really being made, and just made in I believe Puerto Rico in Boyacá. Like they were already fine tuning the whole sophisticated tactics and strategies, which makes a lot of sense, which is why we say that this is interlinked and not separate, because they were coming against anyone and everyone that was for the liberation and self-determination of African people within these borders. And that was exactly what they were doing, especially with the three strikes law, with all the concentration camps in California, three strikes and you're sent to a death camp.
Yeah.
That was essentially what was happening. But we still thought in our brainwashed, suppressed minds that voting could just end it. But it did not. It got worse. As a matter of fact, it got much worse, especially when Reagan became president. It was terrible.
Mhm.
It was terrible. They had children. They had native Chicano children in those concentration camps. A lot of young kids, but we're the problem, right?
That's the
thought,
way they certainly wanted to fucking present it.
uh,
I mean, shit. Okay, even the Mulford Act that they're referring to in that first executive mandate, that was the bill that outlawed public carrying of a loaded gun. And it was specifically written to target the Black Panther Party. And it was signed into law by Reagan.
yeah, it was specifically targeted to us, not anyone else, us. Anyone that's not in so-called white skin. And that was exactly what they were doing. I thought children were our future, right? But clearly, y'all don't believe that when you still have African children and Native children still in these concentration camps in California, thinking that we made progress. We did not. And we did not.
Huh?
It got worse under Reagan as president, clearly, with the crack crisis. And where the crack was coming from. You knew where it was coming from. And you didn't do a damn thing about it because you still wanted to make nice with your oppressor. How did that go? How did that go? For all those children being born with fetal alcohol syndrome and drugs in their system and vials of poison already in their system, growing in the womb, literally coming into a world not even built for them. Like they're cattle once again. We're cattle once again. And in the crack crisis, Reagan made that crack crisis much, much worse. And the AIDS crisis, much, much worse. It was a traumatic, genocidal time for everyone, for gay people, for trans people, especially for African and Latin imperialized native gay and trans people. It was so devastating. It was so devastating. And none of those bootleggers did a damn thing about it. They watched it happen. They watched it happen. They didn't do a damn thing about it. Those Democrats, those Republicans, they didn't show up for us. They didn't show up for us. They left us to die in droves. and almost wiped an entire generation of gay and trans people off. They should be very lucky that some of those people are still here. And that is what they were trying to make clear to everyone back then with that mandate. But they were repressed. They were repressed, they were suppressed, and they were casted off as this terrorist organization. Meanwhile, they were bombing Laos for 8 years straight, every single freaking day. Literally have the so-called Philippines as their military dumping ground, their neo colony. They literally snatched up Borican, they snatched up Hawaii, they snatched up Alaska. They were literally playing a role in the Parsley Massacre, all of this stuff. But that's not terrorism, right?
It actually is. It's domestic terrorism from
Yeah,
a tyrannical fucking government.
right. And once again, the COINTELPRO program, they were fine-tuning that shit in Puerto Rico, because that was literally like ground zero then. You know, because once again, Puerto Rico, a colony of, you know, the US immediately after the Spanish American War. Like, these are all interesting things that we cannot ignore. This is why we say that freaking class struggle is not, you know, like one oppressed group of people is more oppressed than another oppressed group of people that may have a bit more of a social climb up the social ladder. No, no, no. They make that illusion to confuse us and to divide us. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were brainwashing the Chicano people with all this anti-African bullshit as if, you know, we're the problem. And they were brainwashing us into thinking that Chicanos, the so-called Mexicans, the so-called illegals are the problem. You know, that's what they were doing. Brainwashing. They were brainwashing us, and clearly look at where it led us.
They're still doing it with all of their fucking fear mongering about people at the border. And it's like, what the fuck?
Especially
Sean, I see you got your hand up, bro. What's up?
You. I was actually just reconfirming Shanti's point, and you know, the cops bringing drug crises issues to the inner cities. An officer in the last 7 months or so, a police union leader in the Bay Area actually got busted for importing fentanyl using the cops' UPS account.
Oh yeah.
No surprise.
She is not getting any punishment, by the way.
Not any punishment,
Right,
because
they're
they
even-
want to give them any punishment. That's the whole point. They are their scapegoat. They're their dummies for putting those drugs there. There's so much fentanyl usage in the Bay Area because the police and the other tools of the bourgeoisie put it there. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why. This is what Michael DeBoer was talking about in Capitalism Plus Dope Equals Genocide. He makes it very, very clear where the drugs are coming from. He makes it very clear where the problem is coming from. Yeah, we blame the kids for the drugs. We blame the elders for the drugs. We blame the gangs for the drugs, even though we know that these people are imperialized under a condition, under a system that makes it possible to self-destruct because they put it there. There's no other thing. There's no other person, no system that puts the drugs there, those vials of poison that literally make you as like a zombie on the street corner, literally looking like you're about to fall on the ground.
The system created the fucking economic conditions to drive people towards things like that, to even make some extra money to fucking try to survive. And especially when it comes to the lumpen, and when you're coming out of prison and, you know, unable to find fucking work, what the fuck you gonna do? What the fuck you gonna do? So the system created the situation right there, and then threw these fucking drugs in there. Here, have some crack. Here, have some fucking heroin, courtesy of the CIA. Here, and set people up for, you know, being
Failure.
ushered right back into the fucking criminal system by
Again,
doing whatever means they needed to fucking survive. And Shay, I saw you throw your hand up. I know you got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, there was an article a few years ago that came out regarding the CIA and its medical treatment of indigenous people, you know, as well as Black people in this country. They used to take indigenous people, take their kids away from them and put them in hospitals and then drug them, literally drug them. And that happened to me. When I was 12 years old, I used to run away from home because there was so much domestic violence happening in my house. My stepfather was constantly, forever beating up on my mother, and my mother was responding with big fights and stuff. So I ran away, and running away, I ran into.
Okay, Google,
the
set an
hands,
alarm for 9 p.m. Oop.
I ran into the hands of the police, who happened to pick me up, you know, and put me in a detention center for a few days, and then they took me out of there, and they took me to a mental institution where I was 12, by the way, and they put me in a straight jacket, and they drugged me. They was forever drugging me, and I was walking around, walking like a zombie. They were doing this not only to me, they were doing this to indigenous kids, you know, picking them up from the streets or picking them up from their houses and putting them into these institutions and doing this, you know. I was able to, I had the opportunity of escaping, and I went home, and my stepfather went to the court, the family court, and settled the situation, and I went back home, you know. But that was me, you know, and I wonder how many kids are still being picked up by the government, you know, taken to these institutions, drugging them up with all kinds of drugs, Thursine, Compazine, you know, and because they drugged me up, I was walking around like a zombie for a while, you know. So,
yeah,
so when they talk about drugging people, drugging kids, I know I experienced it, you know. But again, you know, they still doing it here. They still doing it to people, you know. So we could go even further back, like into the 20s, when people when they had no jobs. You know what they used to do? They'd pick them up and throw them in jail for lottery.
Yep. And hell, back then, you know, back
Yeah,
then you could also fucking order morphine in a rig out of the Sears catalog in those days too. So
oh yeah,
motherfuckers were high as fuck. And then they created heroin to be the cure for morphine addiction, and they were selling that in catalogs too. And their dumbasses didn't realize that heroin metabolizes directly into morphine in the bloodstream. So that ain't curing shit. But yeah.
yeah.
They're
That-
like, oh, you're a stressed out stay-at-home mom? Order your morphine from Sears. Come on, mom, shoot up.
order your heroin today. Like that was exactly what they were doing, because once again, being with single mothers, you know, this is a capitalist condition as well. Let's put it this way: let's use a mother that is with a man, right? The stay-at-home mom is the worker, and the man is the capitalist. And you know, the mother, the stay-at-home mom, is stressed out and just, you know, stressed out about taking care of the children, making sure that, you know, the laundry is done, things that is very similar to the actual workers' conditions. And so, you know, they seek an escape to not deal with the feelings of it. and they go to whatever is closest, whatever vial poison is closest to not deal with it. And that's exactly what was going on with the heroin epidemic, is that these people were in terrible, terrible housing conditions, in poverty and police repression all over the damn place. And they felt like that there's no real place for them, that there's no real place for them in the world, that assumingly, once again, there's no way out. And so they go to heroin and other vials of poison, whatever they can get their hands across, to drown out the noises, drown out the screams, drown out the smells of everything, to not deal with it. And I strongly believe that they're still doing that shit today because they have nothing to lose. Once again,
Oh yeah.
We're the problem, right? Children are the problem, right? We're your cattle, right? I
And
thought we were
now
supposed
it's
to be
expanded
your
even
future.
now it's expanded even further, where like it ain't just the street drugs. Stay-at-home moms and other, stressed out single parents, they're fucking drugging themselves with whatever pharmaceuticals they can get from their therapist too. And it's like, okay, well, this is societally acceptable because you're getting it from a pharmacy and your fucking, insurance is paying for it, but it's still fucking drugs numbing your mind. If you're taking Xanax and Valium and all that shit, and all of it comes down to living under the stresses of fucking capitalism.
Yep.
And some of those mothers, in some cases, they end up doing the same thing towards their children. Munchausen, Munchausen by proxy, all these things. It's all interconnected. It's a cycle. It's a cycle. It's a cycle. And we think that these things are individual occurrences, when if you look at the structure of capitalism and you compare it to these conditions, it's the same thing. Because that's the point. The whole bourgeois construct of the family, the breadwinner, all that stuff is a bourgeois fucking lie.
Yep.
But that's
Serves
the
to
point.
control the masses.
That's the point. That's the point. They were targeting single mothers, were targeting children, they were targeting kids, they were literally genociding the fuck out of those Boricua and African children. They were, and they still are.
Exactly.
They
It's also
still,
important to
still facing it today. We're still facing that today in Chicago, in Detroit, in LA, in Miami, in New York. We're still dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. It's also important to realize as well that that the drugging of colonized people to certain forms of drug and alcohol has been going on since westward expansion first took root. How the settlers during the early days of westward expansion would get indigenous tribes addicted to alcohol to cause internal destruction and internal grief within their community, so that way it could be easier to colonize and to colonize and destroy them from within. This has been going on since the very conception of the U.S. They have been doing this since forever.
The bars, the liquor stores, where do you
McDonald's, Coca-Cola, they continue to drug and make people addicted to shit that's killing them. Whether it comes in a blunt manner with drugs, or in more subtle manners with alcohol, or fast food restaurants that put unhealthy fucking shit in their food to get you addicted to that shit.
Right. It's chemical warfare.
Yep.
And again, this is exactly what the Black Panthers were warning the masses about with that executive mandate. But once again, they were being repressed, and the empire has nothing to lose. So they'll whatever tactic they can think of in order to suppress and neutralize the African masses, especially the African lumpen children masses. And we see the result of that. We see the result of that.
Exactly.
But don't you know you can fix it if you just fucking vote blue harder? Come on.
don't you know that you can end systemic oppression if you just go to your nonprofit organizations and give them a little hand? Don't you know that?
Right, that'll totally end homelessness. Who doesn't want to live in a shelter where they're in more fucking danger than they are in the street?
Right.
Don't you know that the way to end racism is by putting a new African face on a system that oppresses new African people? It just makes sense, right, guys?
Right.
Right.
Like you can end like transphobia by adding a trans judge to the New York courts, and that'll free all trans people, right? Wrong. Because clearly that didn't work, and it's still not going to work. It will never ever work, because once again, we're not here to make nice. We've been making nice for years, and it had caused more destruction to our community than what we really think. The environmental racism is still here. The gun violence made possible by the bourgeois system is still here. The drug warfare is still here. The liquor stores are still here. The bars are still here. The fast food corporate joints are still here. Because we keep thinking that we can make change from the top down, from the same system that was literally created off of our exploitation. And we think that we're doing something, and we have literally no real Maoist strategy whatsoever. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
It does not matter how many concessions they give us. Change will not come from the top. It's going to come from the bottom. It's going to come from us. Because once again, every single concession that the state has given us, every single form of quote unquote freedom that has been given to us has always been from the masses saying enough is enough. And the bourgeois say, okay, let's appease them a little bit to quell class consciousness and put class struggle to sleep. And the moment that it goes back to sleep, the moment people start saying, oh, well, maybe things are changing for the better, the bourgeois rip off that those concessions and go back to doing the same bullshit they were doing before. It doesn't matter how many concessions.
Is fucking useless.
Exactly.
Reformism is one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. Because the next fucking
because the next president is just gonna get rid of it.
I mean, Roe v. Wade, did we not forget?
Yeah.
Did we not forget?
Hell, now is Roe v. Wade, next is Brown versus Board.
Yeah. Because once again, Brown versus Board, even with Brown versus Board, I don't give a damn what they say. That concession didn't do shit for my people.
It's integrationist. That's what it was. It was an assimilationist tactic.
It was an assimilationist tactic, and we still have segregation in our schools. How did that work? That's why I don't celebrate these people. That's why you should not celebrate these people. Because the thing with so-called Black excellence is that they put Malcolm X right next to Obama and right next to Oprah and right next to Assata Shakur. No, because some of these people engaged in continuing the oppression of their own people, of their own selves, of us.
And some of them continue to do so.
Oprah have no fucking business being next to Assata and Malcolm.
Right.
Or Fannin.
Due to the schools. They do it in the public schools, especially in the largely African segregated public schools, in the elementary schools and in the high schools, where they put all these figures with completely different ideological political lines together and make it seem like, that we did all of this and we're marching towards a new day. They killed Malcolm. They killed King.
And now they want to falsely fucking pretend as if the Uncle Toms are fucking revolutionaries.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And
when we see these things in these schools, we need to talk. We need to address that. We just can't see it. We need to address it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Panthers, man, was so powerful. And I think, to me, they were vanguards of the revolution. Because they always taught us. They taught us right how to struggle. And Huey was a brother that he knew the law. He knew it very good, to the point, man, when everything he did, everything he said, it was legal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we see these things, if I see Malcolm X next to Ronald Reagan, I'm gonna talk about it.
Right.
Talk about it. I don't care if I'm walking into the classroom, I'm walking into a school, and I see that shit, I'm gonna address it.
If I see French
office and tell them about it.
Right.
Exactly. If I see Franz Fanon next to fucking George Washington, I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that shit?
You're not gonna be pissed. You need to talk about it.
Yep.
Right. And I'm so sick and tired of us being lied to right in front of our faces, and our parents thinking that we're getting a good education, we're making strides. No, we're not making strides, because they were banning books. They were banning books when I was in the system, and they're upticking in book bans because they do not want to know. They don't want us to know our destiny. They don't want us to know what actually happened to Malcolm. They don't want us to actually know what happened to King, what happened to the Black Panthers, what happened with Asada, who is thankfully still here with us today, what they did to those people. If you read Medical Apartheid and you read on the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, it would explain why they're banning all those books. They don't want us to know. They don't want us to think about, like, oh my God, have I been living a lie this entire time? Let's change this. They are going full out in Houston, in California, especially in Florida, to ban all those books, because the information, the seeds for the children's revolutionary breakthrough are so potent. So potent. That's why they're banning all those books, because they don't want us to know what they did. And they want us to think that my ancestors developed skills being chattel enslaved, even though we were here in humanity from the very beginning, and we already had societies. We already had infrastructures. We already had math, science, all this stuff. We already had that. We already had more than just skills. We already have more than just skills.
Right.
We were people that were snatched out of our homes and brought over here to replace the labor of another Native people. That was what happened. We were not slaves. We were kidnapped. Once again, we were kidnapped. Our culture was snatched away from us. Years of history gone because of what happened. Even the ones that did not end up on the ships, they were still greatly affected, because it changed our history to something that was not. It changed our destiny to something that was not. And that was a stepping stone into how Africa got here today, how our homeland got here today. But they don't want us to know that all these ships were coming and literally snatching our families away, and literally calling us syphilis-soaked, sexually promiscuous, comparing us to rabbits. 91 years ago, the Public Health Service said all that. They said all of that. It's well documented. You can easily find it. But will they? No, because they banned the information where they will know. They don't want us to think otherwise. They want us to make them. They want us to make us subservient to the system that has been in place. This public education system is not education. Is literally making us subservient to capitalism.
It's grooming.
And we knew
It's
that from
miseducation.
the 70s. We knew that in the 70s. We knew that in the 80s. We knew that in the 90s. We knew that in the 2000s. And some of us still think that we're making strides. And that's a shame. A shame.
Exactly. You know, in my high school, I think I might have already said this before. I can't remember, but in my high school, we had a bunch of books in my high school that we had access to, but all of them, all of the books that had any content that was considered inappropriate, quote unquote, for Florida schools was banned. However, they left like 12 sets of one specific book. Do y'all want to guess what book that was?
What book?
What was it again? George Orwell's Animal Farm. 12 sets of those.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
an anti-communist. So, and it's kind of funny because all the things that he tried to point out and frame as being flaws of communism were actually flaws of capitalism that we've been experiencing more and more ever since. But they like him because he was an anti-communist fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like y'all, if you ever read his works, like it's awful. It's straight up fucking garbage. Like his writing skills are just trash. Like god damn. It's horrible.
Oh, I know.
Oh, another thing to add to what y'all were saying, because that's what they want. They want to portray these political figures that had radical beliefs. They either want to defang them or demonize them, either by whitewashing what they believed in through defanging them and hiding what their beliefs actually were, and making it seem like they were on the side of the oppressors, or they just straight up demonize them and portray them as being these quote unquote psychopathic genocidal murderers that just killed people because they wanted to. Che, Malcolm, Huey, Dennis Banks, so on and so forth. Because y'all know something interesting. One of the most prominent figures in human history, considered to be one of the brightest minds of human history, was a socialist. You want to guess who that was?
What?
Einstein.
Yep, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a socialist.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was.
Yet they never tell you that. They never ever tell you that. Because once again, that's what they want. They want to defang, demonize, or dehumanize these figures, portray them as either being monsters or as being on the side of white supremacy and settler colonialism and the contradictions of capitalism, and completely whitewashing what they actually believed in, because either A, they make it seem like they were on the side of the oppressors, or B, they demonize them so much that that people go, well, if these people were just supposed genocidal murderers that killed for no reason, why should I actually listen? Why should I actually try and find out what they actually believed in? That's what they want. They don't want you to know.
The opposite direction also works. Look at what they did to MLK. They tried to make him look like he was just a straight up pacifist, and all you ever hear about in school is the, peaceful resistance shit. They don't fucking tell you that the reason why the system fucking killed him is because he changed his stance on that started working with the Panthers, started working with people who, you know, were actually arming themselves. And he started arming himself too and going, you know what? Maybe just this peaceful pacifist shit ain't gonna get us there. Especially when now the government themselves is trying to fucking kill so many of us.
A burning
And
house.
so he literally had the Panthers running armed security for him at events that he was going to speak at, and started carrying a fucking pistol himself. They don't fucking tell you that part, because they would love for everybody to believe that his entire shit for his entire life never evolved at all beyond peaceful
I have a
fucking,
dream.
you know, basically political disobedience.
Exactly.
And if they actually read the entire speech, if they read the entire actual speech of the I Have a Dream speech, they would know that it's way more than just, you know, content of character. They love to milk that shit out to a T, okay? And
They
also,
do.
he was starting to connect with poor people.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Poor
yeah, when he started the poor people's movement, and that was uniting people across all fucking races, that scared the fuck out of the system.
Oh yeah, and they killed him. They killed him. They killed him. Not James Earl Ray, the government, because poor people, poor black people. Oh no, and they had to use James Earl Ray as a scapegoat for that entire thing. If you looked at Selma, they were wiretapping his phone.
Just
Put
remember, the CIA had a big part in the murder of Martin Luther King. Just
Oh
like
no,
the
yeah, 100%.
CIA had a part in various murders that they committed throughout history.
Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton.
That was CIA. They call it FBI, but it's really at CIA.
I mean,
Is
it's the truth.
Yep, it's all the truth. It's all the truth. And like what Sister Zen was saying, if they don't demonize you, they will try and completely rewrite what you believed, and to make it seem like you were all, oh, the system is good. Because like she said, they want to make it seem like Malcolm, like Martin Luther King was a static character, like he never changed, like he never left that podium when he made I Have a Dream speech. But MLK was a human being who changed, who evolved, who was correct, who was incorrect, and who shifted in his ideological and political leanings. And the moment he said, I have led my people into a burning house, that's where we have to go.
Oh yeah, a burning house. They don't talk
Yep.
about that part. I read about that part when I was in middle school, but I didn't really understand it until much later, when after the George Floyd uprisings. And if you actually listen to the entire thing, because once again, he was having a breakthrough. They killed him because he was having a breakthrough.
You want to know why
Because
they killed him? You want to know why they killed him, Shanti?
yeah,
They killed him because he was no longer exploitable. That's why.
he was
He was no longer
exploitable. He was starting to struggle with the people on the ground. He saw that assimilation and making nice was literally doing nothing, and it was leading African people to a grave. And he knew that it was not going to work. Like, once again, I don't think a lot of people really understand what he meant by, you know, integration. Integration is more than just having different people being able to intermingle with each other. No, that is literally what it is. Integration literally means that you're integrating yourself with your oppressor, your common class oppressor. That is what integration is. You're no longer African. You're now just a Black American. You're now American. You're now an African American. You're now just like everyone else. You're no longer a Chicano. You're now Mexican American. You know, you're now Latino. You're now Hispanic. You know,
simultaneously still othering you, yet telling you, fuck you, assimilate.
Exactly. Exactly. Because what a lot of people don't realize, and y'all have probably caught it, but whenever they mention colonized people in the US, they'll say African American, Indian American, Mexican American. But when they refer to white people, they just say Americans. They just say Americans. They don't say white Americans, they say Americans.
Wait, they're being
Not Euro-American, not French American, not German American, not English American. No, they still kind of do it sometimes with Irish Americans and Italian Americans, though.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Still get-
especially with the Irish people and Italians, like it's a very, very nuanced history, especially with those two people, because once again, a lot of the assimilationist gangs, the groups that engaged in violence and racist violence against African people, literally upholding their same oppressor. You know what I'm saying? Like these people, are not Columbus. And if you look at what Italians, especially including Sicilians, if you look at them, they don't fit that prototypical white person, because that's
Mhm.
literally the point. Them assimilating into being American was a matter of making nice with them, because they saw that the Irish people were literally struggling in the same boat with African people, and they made them assimilate to being white in order for them to be more divided and have more dissent, which is why that feedback of info has been so lost and so distorted for so long, because like we think that all of them just had a hand in it, but it's not quite the case, because if you actually look, it's the fact that they were forced to become American, not knowing who they are anymore, and literally trying to make nice, especially once again, Daley Sr. being part of the Irish bourgeoisie, having parents from the potato famine made possible by his oppressors.
Right. And it's caused a huge rift amongst the Celtic community because, there's Irish people who turned into straight up fucking racist trash, like what we see up in northern New England. There's a lot of Irish white supremacists who are in, shit fuck groups like NSC 131 and the base and um all that shit, neo-Nazis who are going around fucking putting posters and fucking banners up around Boston saying keep Boston Irish, keep Boston white, all this shit. And then there's other people who are Irish or Scottish as well, who are like, excuse me, motherfucker? Like, who the fuck had our backs and made sure we survived? Native and Black people did. We are in the same fucking boat, and fuck you for jumping in the oppressor's fucking bandwagon,
Yeah.
So it's been a huge dividing rift of polarization of one direction or the other, of either turning into a vehement fucking racist piece of shit or someone who is vehemently anti-racist and
Right.
Right.
And Bernadette Devlin was literally going against Irish people that have fully assimilated and thinking that African people are the enemy, literally eating with their oppressor as a means of making nice with them. And Bernadette Devlin, a fucking badass, a fucking Irish badass, okay? She said that about Boston, about the assimilated Irish in Boston. She said it out of her own mouth that it's disgusting that they're literally making these attacks against African people, but look at the same oppressor that we all have. Come on, it's not that hard to see.
It's not.
Rocket science.
It's
exactly
oppressor. It's the same oppressor. They treat everyone the same exact way. They just make that illusion as if these people inherently, quote unquote, have inherently this high social ladder climb up the ladder when that's not even the case. Because once again, privilege is a timetable, and with white privilege, you're only as exploitable socially, especially as your counterparts. And once you actually start coming to where your real destiny is, who your real identity is, where you come from, once you realize where you come from and actually start struggling alongside everyone else, then you become the next target.
Exactly. Literally.
Comrade Shay, I saw you throw your hand up a second ago. What's up, comrade?
Who, you, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the only Che here.
I read an article just recently where it talked about Israel is the enemy of the people. And we need to be very careful with that. Because Israel is not the enemy of the people. The enemy of the people is fascism. The enemy of the people is fascism. And a lot of Israelites in Israel, in Palestine, are fighting with the Palestinians. So we got to be very careful when we talk about that. Because we can't say that Israel is the enemy, because Israel is not the enemy. That's not the enemy of the Palestinian people. We know
It's
who
the Zionists.
Huh?
The Zionists, exactly.
It's the Zionist regime that's in power.
That's who they are fighting against.
It's the white supremacists,
not the Israels. So we need to understand that, because a lot of people, when we talk about Zionism, they combine Zionism with Israel, and they make it seem like we against the Israel people. We not.
Right.
Right.
It's like if you can't differentiate between those two things, then you end up sliding down that very dirty, slippery slope of anti-Semitism. And it's like, yo, most Jewish people are not fucking Zionists. Honestly, there's probably just as many, if not more, Zionist Christians than there is Zionist Jewish people. There's a massive movement of Jewish people who are vehemently fucking anti-Zionist.
Right.
And speak out against this oppression, against the apartheid state, the whole fucking 9 yards, and especially the Mizrahi Jews of Palestine who never fucking left Palestine.
Exactly.
They're going, what the fuck are y'all doing trying to murder the fuck out of our cousins?
Right.
Exactly.
And the whole narrative about, us, about the Palestinians, being, anti-Jewish and stuff, and us advocating for the full liberation and self-determination of the people and land of Palestine is anti-Jewish. If it's anti-Jewish, then why are most indigenous Palestinians Jewish?
Exactly. They never mentioned that.
Another factor that people love to leave out or just remain ignorant to is the fact that Arabic people are just as much Semitic as us Jews are. So these war crimes, these crimes against humanity itself that the Zionist regime is enacting are in fact anti-Semitic.
Yeah. So already that doesn't make any freaking sense, because again, most Palestinians are Jews. So that already does not make no damn sense. Like, really? If they actually knew their information, they would, they would keep Palestine out of their damn mouth, because once again, most Palestinians are Jewish. So the whole thing about us advocating for Palestine being anti-Jewish and stuff does not make sense. Hello.
Hell, they could even look at one of the few true things as far as the genealogical records that are in the fucking Torah and the Bible, and grasp that both the Arabic line and the Jewish line are descendants of Abraham and fucking cousins, always have been.
Exactly. Also, guys,
one ethnic group of Semitic people.
Also, guys, just want to say that I gotta go. That's what I want to say. All power to the people.
That's okay. Actually, we're at 2.5 hours, so this is a good point to, wrap this up before the recording gets too damn long. But as always, an incredibly informative and powerful discussion. And thank you, Comrade Shay, for bringing up the situation in Palestine right now, because that does fucking correlate to everything that we are talking about here, especially when it comes to like the concentration camps and shit like that, because that is literally what the West Bank and the Gaza Strip are, is open air fucking concentration camps.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that into the
Yeah,
convo
thank you
too.
too. Thank you too. Thank you too.
Nah.
So we closing out?
Yeah, we might as well. It's been a half hour. So all fucking night. Yeah. God, I had to leave a note on the video from last week of like, this is not over 4 hours long. The recording next to me got left going. I'm sorry.
I know. There was a time that we stood up almost till 12 o'clock. Man.
Right.
We were talking.
Oh yeah, I
talking and
remember.
Yeah, we're good at that. We're really good at that. We're some long-winded ass motherfuckers. Just saying. Talk all night. But I'll at least cut off the recording. If y'all want, we can leave the Zoom room open and continue the discussion and stuff.
I gotta go. I got things I gotta
Yeah,
do.
me too.
Okay, right on. All right,
Yeah.
y'all have a good evening. We will see you Friday for the second Rainbow Coalition reading. And
At what time?
Friday is going to be 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the colonists allow me, I'll be there.
Well, I hope that the power stays on and the internet
I
stays
hope they
on.
allow it.
You can join us. Because,
I
and
hope
we,
so. I hope
Johnny
so.
Torres
Just
book
hope.
yesterday.
Just hope.
You said 8 o'clock?
7 o'clock on Friday.
7 o'clock. Right.
Yep. 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So love y'all.
Love you too. All
Love you
power,
too.
comrade.
All
All
power.
power.